Marvel's first family is back on the silver screen. Is it fantastic, or is it a portent of doom? Let's find out.
You've seen it before, haven't you?
Once more unto the bridge, dear friends.
Again and again until we're both dead.
There's only like 12 stories. They change around little details, but they're all pretty much the same.
Deja vu. Something very familiar about it.
Hello, welcome to You've Seen It Before, movie reviews, connections in mind. The Fantastic Four, First Steps, is the latest film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is the beginning of phase, we're in 6, and is the first film in this, soft reboot of the MCU, if you will. It is directed by Matt Shakman, and this stars Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards, Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm, Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm, and Eben Moss-Bachrach as Ben Grimm, aka the Fantastic Four, in a different part of the multiverse. The Fantastic Four are Earth's protectors when the evil being known as Galactus is headed towards Earth, heralded by his servant Shalabal, aka the Silver Surfer. It is up to the Fantastic Four to face this new threat head-on and save the world at a price that everyone can live with and not one where it is too high. Now, this video will contain spoilers of Fantastic Four First Steps. I'll be doing my spoiler-free thoughts first and foremost, though, but just so you know, there will be some spoilers later on this review. So, first things first, let's get into some spoiler-free thoughts on Fantastic Four First Steps. Is this a good return to form for the MCU? Is this a good Fantastic Four movie? This is the first time that we've had Fantastic Four in Marvel since Disney bought Fox. So is this a good return to form for that? And is this a good theater experience? I would say yes to all of the above, because this is quite simply a fun movie. Between this and Superman from a couple weeks ago, we have definitely entered an age where superhero movies are a lot more comfortable with presenting their worlds, I think. And while it's not quite as bad as Superman when it comes to this point, this movie does have a lot of just presenting weird stuff as fact and be like, yeah, you know what? This is what it is. Deal with it. Move on. It's like, is there a underground kingdom underneath the world? Sure, why not? Is this is a different Earth where it's the 60s, but it's also the future? Sure, why not? It's the Fantastic Four have basically perfected space travel and faster light speed. Sure, why not? These are the kind of things that I can appreciate. Like, I don't need to know all the steps of how Reed Richards develop the spaceship that would go into, orbit. And they have a nice little, news intro to reintroduce people. It's like, hey, these are astronauts. They went into space. They got, hit by a space cloud or whatever that altered their bodies. And now they're Fantastic Four. They've been in that like that for a while now. It's like, okay, cool. That's all we need to know. And that's to this movie's service. Like, I don't need to have a drawn out origin story for this. We've gotten that a couple times at this point. So that being said, what makes this movie great? And it's the actors and the characters. If the main four people didn't work, then this movie would just completely bomb. Hopefully that is not the case. Everyone has great chemistry with each other. They pick these four actors very well. They have great rapport with one another. The main focus, I believe, is on Sue and Reed as they're, Sue is pregnant and she has to, it's like, oh well, the world's gonna get up all in her business. It's like, oh, is your kid gonna be a boy? Beyond being a boy, oh, is the kid gonna have superpowers and gonna join the team? And it's like, yes, there's that, and it's like, oh, you're still, you're still fighting evil, while pregnant. It's like, that's a thing. And they have great chemistry as a married couple. I buy them as a married couple. And, when the kid eventually is born, it's like, I buy these as parents. And, that they both have their strengths and weaknesses on that front. And on the other half of the team, you got Johnny and Ben, and they both have their own things. I mean, Johnny is a lot smarter than I think his previous incarnations, at least in cinematic form. And he's got his own specialty interests on the team, and he could do more than just flame on. And Ben, they do a really good job with showing he's a member of the community. I mean, he's from Brooklyn, and he's got and he does cool things. It's like you have the kids in the synagogue or whatever, and like there's like lift the car. It's like, oh, you want to lift the car? All right, let's lift the car here. And it's like, yeah, that's great rapport. I love that about this movie. And again, if those characters were not done as well as they are, this movie would just be totally flat, because unfortunately this is not a unique problem to this movie. A lot of Marvel movies have this. The villain aspect is the weakest part of this movie, and you have the ultimate threat of like, Galactus is going to destroy the world and we want to save the world. Yes, we have that, but we've had that happen. 15, 20 other Marvel movies have done that. It's like the world's kind of used to this by now. It's like, if the world's not going to come to end, next year, whatever. Oh yeah, there's going to be another, doomsday thing coming up another time, whatever. It's like, it's kind of old news at this point. There is, this is in the trailers as well. So this is not a, this is a milestone. Like I said, it's in the trailers. It's in a bunch of the marketing material. The real conflict, I think, is more interesting, and what leads to a lot of interesting conversations between characters and people is Galactus' demand, where, again, I did not know anything about the comic, but apparently Baby Richards, I guess his name is Franklin, he's a big deal in the comics, and Galactus knows it's a big deal. He's basically like, if you give up your child, give me your child, I will spare the Earth. And obviously, the parents are like, no way, that's not going to happen. But then the rest of the world is like, one kid for the entire planet, like, why not? So that's an interesting conflict to me, because it's like, yes, that it brings about that dynamic. It brings the conversation like, needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. But then it's like, if you're like me, if you're a Trekkie like me, in Star Trek 3, Kirk flips that on its head. It's like, the needs of the one outweigh the needs of the many. And it's like, well, you could see it both ways, kind of, in that way. It opens it opens conversations, and it opens doors that I think is unique to this movie in a good way. And I like that about this. Unfortunately, where this movie does fall flat a little bit is the action scenes, because while they're not bad, I mean, it's fun to see, Reed stretching all over the place, Sue force fielding or whatever, and Johnny flaming on, and Ben just smashing things, and, it's all fun to see, Ben's kind of tired of like, dude, say the thing, and it's like, no, I'm not saying it, I'm not saying it, then it's like, there's fun to be had there, but especially the final action scene is, I mean, it's a little lackluster just because it's new, because we haven't seen, we've seen this new for, the first Fantastic Four movie, so we're seeing them in action for the first time, but, you can only see, New York buildings get smashed to bits in this Marvel universe so many times and feel new for the first time. It's like, there's a lot of that in this movie, especially in the final conflict, and I don't know, I felt like that kind of let us down a little bit. But that being said, these are relatively minor things to nitpick on, because overall, I'd have a fun time. I can't say this is the best Marvel movie of all time, or, oh my gosh, the Fantastic Four, they blew our doors off the first chance they got, and it's like, I don't necessarily think they did that, but this movie did reintroduce us, this version of the Fantastic Four into the MCU. This was a good introduction, and there's at least, the 1 minute mid-credit scene is, it does get me invested in where we're going to go next. Hint, hint, it's about, Avengers Doomsday, which is coming soon, next year, I believe, if they keep to that release schedule. So I'm curious. It does get me invested in that, and on that level, it did its job. Just kind of like what Superman did for the DCU. It was fun. It wasn't the best, but it did its job reintroducing this universe, and I'm curious to look more. So on that level, Fantastic Four First Steps did its job. And so if I was going to give the Fantastic Four First Steps a letter grade, I would say this is an A-. Some nitpicks do knock it down. It's not a perfect movie, but it is very, very entertaining nonetheless. And if I was going to weigh this in on the scale of unoriginality, I would say this weighs in at original enough, a passing grade for sure, but not something to be overly proud of in this media landscape. So those are my main spoiler-free thoughts on Fantastic Four First Steps. Now let's get into some spoiler talk as certain plot developments and character arcs that may seem familiar to you, or you may have seen them before. Now, I feel like it's only appropriate to start this off with the red-suited Disney character elephant in the room, and that is The Incredibles, because for the longest time, The Incredibles was considered to be the best cinematic adaptation of the Fantastic Four, because while I appreciate the first Tim Story Fantastic Four from 2005, and to a lesser extent, I also kind of appreciate, the Rise of the Silver Surfer. Less said about, Fan Four Stick the Better. I can acknowledge that they're not as good as the Incredibles as far as depicting the family of superheroes dynamic with more or less the same powers. So, how does this movie compare to The Incredibles? I would say this now becomes the best Fantastic Four adaptation on screen, but I still prefer The Incredibles over First Steps, if that makes sense. But and refreshingly, there's not a whole ton of overlap between The Incredibles and this. However, I did find it curious that by the end of The Incredibles, you were resorting to the same villain scheme as Galactus is in First Steps, where it's like, nope, I'm gonna take your baby, and it's like, well, don't mess with Jack, and presumably don't mess with Franklin, because we already know that Franklin can bring Sue Storm back from the dead. What else can he do? I don't know. We'll see. But that was an interesting comparison to be made, and also another comparison that less plot specific and more just cinematically shot specific. When Shalabal, the Silver Surfer, first arrives on Earth, she's in the futuristic Times Square, and she arrives, and you have all the news media on the screens around Times Square, now tuned into the same feed with the same shot of Silver Surfer on there, and you can see, the way it's shot, it looked very similar to me to The Amazing Spider-Man 2 with Electro going to Times Square, and he's seeing, oh yeah, you can see all of my all the screens, they're all looking at me, and it's like, it's curious that we have another Marvel movie that does that same shot. So not a huge thing, but that was just something to me, and really those are the main things that I kind of wanted to talk about. I could nitpick other things. I mean, you could also point to back to The Incredibles with you have the Underminer underneath the city, and then you have Mole Man here. But again, that's just comics in general. So, what did you think of Fantastic Four First Steps? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What about my analysis? Do you agree, disagree? Did I miss something? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate whatever audience I can get. Be sure to look for my next movie review, which will be for The Naked Gun, the 2025 reboot of the comedy franchise with Liam Neeson. That comes out August 1st, I believe. So be sure to look for that. And if you like this video or any other video on my channel, please give me a like, share, and especially subscribe. I would very much appreciate it. Again, thank you so much for watching, but just remember, there is nothing new under the sun. And yes, you have seen it before.